Didn't see you there. Okay, I did because I did set up the camera, but sorry, 1 second. You can't be my assistant right now. Anyways, my name is Madison Chola, and I am a student at the University of Arkansas, and this is my video on the renal system for Biology 2211 Lab, better known as Human Physiology. So, before we actually get into this, I'm going to simplify this as much as possible. The only way I can... Sorry, there's a bug. The only way I can think of right now, and then I will go a little more in depth. So, let's go. Okay, so take a look at this faucet. Now, somewhere behind these walls is the filter, the water filter from our septic tank, which in a way is like a kidney, or the kidneys, however you want to put it. So let's just follow this hose as best we can, and let's just pretend that these are all of the different tubules and parts of the renal system that will, oh, and the hose disconnects there. Let's pretend that that doesn't do that because that's not healthy. Okay, now let's pretend that the hose didn't disconnect back there and that it was all one long flowing system of tubes. So imagine that that hose or those tubules at some point or another would, you know, excrete and secrete different substances until you're left with urine, which, let's just pretend this little pool is a bladder, and it's pretty full right now. So eventually the body is, you know, gonna send some neural impulses through action potentials to different muscles to, you know, finally make you excrete that. Now I'm not gonna dump out that whole pool because that is my dog's. So I'm standing in water, but let's go dig into this further somewhere else. So first let's talk about exactly what the renal system does. So essentially it controls your plasma and the osmolarity, and volume. It controls the concentrations of different chemicals and wastes, ions, and what have you within the body and bloodstream. And finally, it helps regulate pH, which is super important. So let's start from the beginning with the kidneys. Now, the kidneys are like the coffee filter of your body. They filter out your blood and your plasma and get rid of the things you don't need, other than CO2, because part of that goes out through your lungs, but the kidneys do create and utilize bicarbonate, especially in pH regulation, which we will get into in a minute. So when it comes to kidneys, they're made up with like over 1 million nephrons, which are their functional units, that are furthermore consisting of tubules. And those tubules are pretty much what connect everything all the way down to the ureter. Filtrate initially passes through the glomeruli, hope I'm saying that right, and through the Bowman's capsule. So everything that goes through there initially starts in the proximal convoluted tubule. So here is where a lot of reabsorption happens, including glucose, ions, water, and other organic molecules. It actually accounts for 65% of reabsorption of sodium and water. After it passes through there, it goes through the loop of Henle, where initially when it's coming down, more water is permeable, and as it's coming back up, the solutes are more permeable. This is where osmolality has the biggest shift, and it becomes a positive, and it's a very positive feedback system. Essentially, the osmolality gets really high, at least, you know, to scale. It gets pretty high right at the bottom of the loop between the descending and ascending parts of the loop, because it kind of goes like this. Finally, in that little section is the distal convoluted tubule, where K plus better known as the potassium ion, is secreted back into the fluid that is passing through. Finally, after all that little travel, it goes to a collecting duct, and collecting ducts collecting ducts I can't say that word apparently, come together to the ureters, which go all the way down to the urinary bladder. Now, the excretion of urine through the bladder, and well, from the bladder through the urethras, is known as micturition, which is facilitated when the bladder fills enough that sensory receptors send, the information that they received all the way up to the nervous system. Eventually, the parasympathetic and sympathetic neurons will fire action potentials to start either the guarding or the voiding reflex, which eventually further stimulation will be needed to open up the internal and external sphincters and therefore allow the release of urine from the bladder through the urethra, finally expelling all of the waste that has been filtered out throughout the entire renal system process. Through all of this, the major takeaway is that the renal system really does a lot in maintaining pretty much every fluid in your body. It protects you from alkalosis and acidosis, which are too little or too much hydrogen ions in the blood, and therefore, helps keep your pH in check. It gets rid of waste, but it also releases things like ADH, antidiuretic hormone, which help retain the body's water in cases of dehydration, or if you've consumed a lot of salts. So this system is super important, and is the reason that either you're not always puffy from all the salt, or you're not super tired from not having enough water in your body, because your body is constantly fighting to maintain that homeostatic position. So thank you guys for watching this. Let's go dig it into. So first, let's talk about, this is filming, okay. Finally, everything that's passed through goes down to a collecting duct. And that collecting duct, excretion of urine is called micturition.